This is a video response to Brittany's video. First of all, Brittany, don't worry, you sounded just fine. You don't have to sound like a polished professional speaker. This is kind of taking the place of classroom interaction that we don't have, so don't stress about it. I think you did great. You made your points, and that's the important thing. And it came across just fine. When you talk about this inevitability of the human-environment interaction from Leopold, I think that's a great point to bring up, and it's something that a lot of people just don't completely grasp. We often see the environment as some wilderness out there, and maybe we need to conserve or we need to save it or whatever, but when we think about our own neighborhoods, we don't think of them as being part of the environment, but they are. There's no hard and fast line between them. Not only is there no hard and fast line as far as the edge of our world versus the edge of nature, but there's no border as far as the effects on what has been perceived as the wilderness by what we do. We know that water systems and the way that air flows and the effects we have as far as like global climate change have shown us that there is no boundary. And so I think it's really important to see this. I like the use of the term inevitability. It makes it feel a little ominous, but maybe it needs to feel ominous. So you were also talking about growth and how we need to be able to deal with the fact that growth is just a part of nature, the environment, and who we are. And the thing that I would like to maybe hear more of, or would have liked to have heard more of, is when we think about growth, sometimes, if you think about growth like, say, plants, they grow as part of a cycle. They're part of a cycle that's established and that's not as generally as kind of destructive as some of the growth that humans tend to enact. So, the growth of business and the growth of monetary systems and the growth of wealth in the United States has been at the expense of so many other nations and the environment in so many cases. That's a different kind of growth. So what kind of growth is inevitable and acceptable versus what kind of growth is maybe changeable or should be changed and can be changed? That's something that comes to mind for me, but thought-provoking, so that's a great thing. I also like your comment from McDonough and Braungart about this blindness that people have from essentially greenwashing. So it's good imagery that you brought up, and this idea of it being kind of out of sight and then out of mind. Well, my response to that would be, so how can it be insight? How can we bring it back into view in a way that doesn't just make people feel guilty or defensive, but instead makes them see something and think, oh, actually I'd like to change that, or there's an alternative. One way that I like to see it is that you don't present a problem, you present a solution. You say, here is this issue, here is something that we need to be able to see. We need to see the waste we're creating, but we don't need to see it to make us feel horrible and guilty. We need to see it to motivate us alongside something that would be better, some other solution. And this is why it's important to think through solutions as much as possible. From the Agyeman reading, the main point that you bring up is this kind of holistic vision and action, which is, I think, a very good thing, thinking through the complexity of sustainability and all these connections. Very good place to go with that. Bringing up diapers, wow, that's a biggie. I have a baby right now, and I use these, cloth. They're kind of fancy, technologically advanced, but they're still cloth diapers. And when I went on a road trip, we temporarily were using these disposable ones, and they were supposed to be these eco-friendly ones. But how eco-friendly are they? You see this volume of waste that we're producing. It's just amazing. It's overwhelming, and it's not something. Not only is it not something that people tend to think about, but it's really hard to think about. It's a lot of work to not do that. These manufacturers have made these fantastic cloth diapers that make it much easier. It's nowhere near as bad as I think most people would think it would be. But this is something that happens with all kinds of products, where people there hasn't been enough imagination when it comes to redesign, which is I think where McDonough and Braungart really step in and say, we can reimagine design so that we don't end up with products that have to either be thrown away or downcycled. The connection to food systems and availability, I don't think that was a tangent. I think that's a great point, and that's something that we need to think about. And food systems are a very important part of environmental justice and sustainability. And I just ask myself, is it really more expensive? We've got these dollar items versus the salads. Well, sure, you can get something off the dollar menu versus the salad, and there's this big price difference. Why? Why is there that price difference? To me, I feel like a lot of those costs have been kind of externalized. They've been put somewhere else. Why is the beef on the dollar menu hamburger so cheap? Well, it's so cheap because there are giant government subsidies for beef producers, and we've wiped out huge amounts of forest land and rainforests in Brazil and all kinds of other things in order to do this, and we're going to pay the price down the line. We're already paying the price. You can't exactly send McDonald's a bill for the the lack of carbon sequestering that the trees would use that have been cut down, etc. It gets very complicated. And also, they're marketing these things to very different people. The people who are eating the salads are making a choice that they're willing and able to pay for, and that's not something everyone is able to do. So it gets very complicated very quickly. I often question those kind of pricing standards, but it's definitely worth bringing up. And you also talked about reusing versus creating more waste. I don't feel like you finished your thought on that exactly, but I think it's a good direction to go in, and kind of links back into this idea of waste and trying to holistically look at systems, and kind of McDonough and Braungart's ideas of reimagining design of products and processes for creating products, so that we can be kind of sane consumers instead of trying to become, some sort of primitive folk who aren't consuming products in the same way anymore. I think that's pretty unrealistic. So, good point. Overall on the video, I think you did a good job, and you have some great ideas. Make sure that there's a couple of thoughts that I think you maybe could have gone a little more depth on. But for the most part, I think you did a great job. So I look forward to seeing your next post.